I'll never forget the moment I asked Mom about prom. I'd been planning the conversation for weeks, waiting for the right time when she seemed happy and relaxed. That Saturday morning, I found her drinking coffee in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone with a small smile. Perfect timing, I thought. Mom, I started nervously. Prom is coming up in a few weeks, and I was wondering if maybe we could look at dresses together? The smile vanished from her face instantly, replaced by the cold expression I knew too well. She didn't even look up from her phone. "We can't afford it," she said flatly, like I'd asked for a diamond-encrusted tiara. "Money doesn't grow on trees, and prom is just a silly dance. Don't ask again." The finality in her voice hit me like a slap. I stood there for a moment, hoping she might change her mind or at least soften a little, but she just kept scrolling through her phone like I wasn't even there. My heart sank to my stomach as I realized this conversation was over before it had really begun. Back in my room, I opened my closet and stared at the pathetic collection of clothes hanging there. Hand-me-downs from older cousins, clearance items Mom grudgingly bought when my old clothes were literally falling apart, and a few items I'd managed to buy myself with babysitting money. Nothing even remotely appropriate for prom. The nicest thing I owned was a plain black dress I'd worn to my grandmother's funeral 2 years ago, and even that had a small stain on the sleeve. I tried holding up different pieces, imagining how I might make something work, but it was hopeless. While my friends were planning elegant gowns and coordinating accessories, I was wondering if I could somehow transform a Target clearance dress into something magical. The shame burned in my chest as I realized how impossible that would be. Even with all the Pinterest tutorials in the world, there was no way to make my meager wardrobe suitable for what was supposed to be one of the most special nights of high school. I closed the closet door and sat on my bed, feeling like Cinderella without a fairy godmother. School became torture the next week. Everywhere I turned, girls were excitedly discussing their prom plans. "Look at this dress," Madison squealed, showing photos on her phone to a group of friends gathered around her locker. "My mom and I found it at that boutique downtown. It was expensive, but she said prom only happens once." The dress was stunning, deep blue with sparkly details that caught the light beautifully. Other girls chimed in with their own finds, comparing notes about shoes, jewelry, and hair appointments. When someone inevitably asked about my plans, I forced a bright smile and lied through my teeth. "Oh, I'm not really into the whole prom thing," I said with a casual shrug. "I'd rather save the money for something more practical." The lie tasted bitter in my mouth, but it was easier than admitting the truth. Some girls looked surprised. I'd always been good at school events and seemed like the type who would love prom. But they didn't push, probably assuming I was just being mature and responsible. If only they knew how desperately I wanted to join their excited planning sessions. That night, I cried quietly into my pillow so no one would hear. This was supposed to be one of the biggest nights of my senior year, a milestone I'd been looking forward to since freshman year. I'd imagined getting ready with friends, taking pictures, dancing until my feet hurt. Instead, I'd be sitting at home while everyone else made memories that would last a lifetime. The unfairness of it all felt overwhelming. Other parents were excitedly dress shopping with their daughters, taking photos at boutiques, making appointments for hair and nails. My mom wouldn't even consider it, dismissing something important to me as frivolous and wasteful. I understood that money was tight. I'd heard enough arguments about bills and expenses over the years, but this felt like more than just financial constraints. It felt like she genuinely didn't care about things that mattered to me. I stared at the ceiling, wondering if I was being selfish for wanting this so badly, or if it was normal to feel heartbroken when your own mother wouldn't help you experience a once-in-a-lifetime event. The next afternoon, the doorbell rang while I was doing homework. A delivery truck sat in our driveway, and the driver handed me a large package addressed to Mom. She wasn't home yet, but the box felt surprisingly heavy for its size. I set it on the kitchen counter and went back to my room, not thinking much about it. When Mom got home an hour later, I heard her excited squeal from downstairs. "Finally," she called out, her voice full of joy. Curiosity got the better of me, so I crept to the top of the stairs to see what had made her so happy. She was pulling tissue paper out of the box, revealing what looked like a pair of shoes. But not just any shoes. These were clearly expensive, with sleek lines and what looked like genuine leather. Mom held them up to the light, admiring them from every angle like they were precious jewels. Perfect, she murmured to herself, already trying one on. I watched from the shadows, confused by her excitement over footwear, especially when she'd just told me we couldn't afford prom expenses. But it was just a pair of shoes, right? How much could they cost? My blood ran cold when I saw the receipt sticking out of the box. I waited until Mom went upstairs to shower, then quickly grabbed the paper to look at it. The number at the bottom made me gasp so loudly I had to cover my mouth with my hand. $347. For one pair of shoes. The same woman who'd told me we couldn't afford a prom dress had just spent almost $350 on footwear for herself. I read the receipt 3 times, making sure I wasn't misreading the price. Designer brand, purchased online, expedited shipping that cost an additional $30. I stood in the kitchen, holding that piece of paper, feeling like my world was tilting sideways. A decent prom dress could be found for less than half that amount. I'd seen beautiful options at department stores for under $200, some even less during sales. But she'd spent more on a single pair of shoes, for a random Tuesday, not even a special occasion, than it would have cost to make one of my biggest dreams come true. The hypocrisy felt like a knife twisting in my chest. It wasn't that we couldn't afford prom. It was that she didn't think I was worth spending money on. At dinner that night, my younger brother Kyle was showing off his new watch. Mom got it for me just because, he bragged, rolling up his sleeve to display the sleek digital timepiece. She said I deserved something nice for getting good grades. I stared at the watch, recognizing it as one of the expensive brands that cost over $100. Kyle's idea of good grades was mostly B's with a few A's mixed in, exactly the same academic performance I'd maintained for years without any special rewards. That's nice, I said quietly, trying to keep the bitterness out of my voice. Mom beamed at Kyle like he'd just won a Nobel Prize. My smart boy deserves the best, she said, ruffling his hair affectionately. The contrast was stark and painful. Kyle got expensive gifts just because, while I couldn't get help with something truly meaningful. I poked at my food, no longer hungry, while they discussed all the compliments Kyle had gotten on his new watch at school. The unfairness cut so deep I could barely breathe. Same grades, same family, completely different treatment. I was invisible unless they needed chores done, but Kyle was celebrated for existing. I tried one more time at dinner the following week, hoping maybe Mom had just been stressed before. I know you said we can't do prom, I started carefully, but I've been looking online, and there are some really affordable options. I even found some nice dresses for under $100. Mom's fork stopped halfway to her mouth, and she gave me a look that could have frozen fire. We said no, she snapped, loud enough that Kyle looked up from his phone in surprise. Don't embarrass us with your constant whining and begging. It's pathetic. The word pathetic hit me like a physical blow. I felt my cheeks burn with shame as Kyle smirked across the table, clearly enjoying my humiliation. Dad didn't even look up from his plate, apparently fine with Mom's harsh words. Some things are more important than frivolous dances, Mom continued, her voice dripping with disdain. Maybe when you're older, you'll understand priorities. Priorities. Like her new shoes and Kyle's unnecessary watch. I excused myself from the table before the tears could start, her cruel words echoing in my head. I wasn't just being denied prom, I was being made to feel stupid and selfish for wanting it. Mrs. Anderson, my favorite English teacher, stopped me after class the next day. I heard through the teacher grapevine that prom planning is in full swing, she said with a warm smile. Are you excited? I bet you'll look absolutely stunning. Her genuine enthusiasm made my throat tight with unshed tears. I forced a bright smile and tried to sound casual. Oh, I actually decided not to go, I lied smoothly. I'd rather save the money for college expenses. Plus, all that formal dress-up stuff isn't really my thing. Mrs. Anderson looked surprised, tilting her head slightly as she studied my face. Really? You always seem to enjoy our school dances and spirit events. I would have thought prom would be right up your alley. I shrugged, maintaining my fake nonchalant attitude. I guess I'm just more practical than most girls my age. She nodded slowly, but I could see doubt in her eyes. Mrs. Anderson was perceptive. She probably sensed that something was off about my explanation. But she was too polite to push, instead just saying, "Well, whatever you decide, I hope you have a wonderful evening that makes you happy." Later that night, I was headed to the bathroom when I heard Mom's voice drifting from her bedroom. She was on the phone with her friend Carol, laughing about something. "Oh, you know teenagers," she was saying dismissively. "My daughter keeps pestering me about some prom dress, but honestly, Carol, I think the whole thing is such a waste of money. I mean, one night for hundreds of dollars? I'd much rather spend money on things that actually matter, like those gorgeous shoes I just bought." My stomach dropped as I pressed myself against the hallway wall, listening in horror. "Girls that age get so caught up in superficial nonsense," Mom continued with a laugh. "She'll thank me someday for teaching her better values than throwing money away on a silly dance." My hands clenched into fists as I heard Carol agreeing, both women chuckling about how dramatic teenage girls could be. Values. She was calling it values while spending twice as much on footwear as a prom dress would cost. The conversation continued, but I couldn't listen anymore. I crept back to my room, Mom's words burning in my ears. She didn't just think prom wasn't worth the money, she thought I wasn't worth it. I sat at my desk that night, staring at my journal. The blank page seemed to mock me, waiting for words I wasn't sure I was brave enough to write. Finally, my pen began to move almost on its own. "I'm tired of being invisible," I wrote, the words appearing shakier than I expected. "I'm tired of being the daughter who doesn't deserve new shoes or watches just because. I'm tired of being told my dreams are pathetic while everyone else's wants get fulfilled without question." The floodgates opened, and page after page filled with everything I'd been holding inside. The unfairness, the favoritism, the way I was made to feel guilty for wanting anything at all. "I'm done waiting for someone else to decide I'm worth investing in," I continued, surprised by the strength in my own words. "I'm done being the forgotten daughter, the one whose feelings don't matter, whose milestones aren't worth celebrating." By the time I finished writing, my hand was cramped and my face was wet with tears, but I felt something new stirring in my chest. Not hope exactly, but determination. I was done being invisible. If no one else would make me feel valued, I'd have to find a way to do it myself. The next day after school, instead of going straight home, I walked to Murphy's Diner downtown. I'd eaten there a few times and noticed they always seemed busy, with help-wanted signs occasionally posted in the window. Taking a deep breath, I pushed through the door and approached the hostess. "Excuse me, are you hiring part-time workers?" I asked, trying to sound more confident than I felt. She looked me up and down, probably wondering if I was old enough to work. "You'll need to talk to Mr. Murphy," she said, pointing toward a middle-aged man behind the counter. My heart pounded as I walked over, rehearsing my pitch in my head. "I'm looking for part-time work," I told him. "I'm 17, responsible, and I really need this job." Something in my voice must have convinced him, because he studied me for a moment before nodding. "Can you start this weekend?" "Weekend shifts after school on weekdays if your grades stay good." I almost cried with relief. "Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much." As I filled out the paperwork, I felt like I was taking the first real step toward controlling my own destiny. Balancing school and work was harder than I'd expected. My feet ached from standing for hours, my arms hurt from carrying heavy trays, and I was constantly exhausted. But every night when I got home, I'd carefully count my tips and wages, adding them to the small jar hidden in my closet labeled Prom Fund. Dollar by dollar, the amount grew. $5 from a table of elderly ladies who complimented my service. $8 from a businessman who seemed impressed by how efficiently I handled his complicated order. $3 from a family with young kids who left a mess but appreciated my patience. Some days were better than others. Weekend shifts usually meant bigger tips, while slow weekday afternoons barely covered bus fare home. My hands were constantly chapped from washing dishes, and I had permanent marker stains on my fingers from writing orders. But every time I felt like giving up, I'd picture myself at prom, wearing a dress I'd earned myself, proving to everyone, especially Mom, that I wasn't pathetic or frivolous. I was determined, resourceful, and stronger than anyone gave me credit for. 3 weeks into working, I finally had enough courage to walk into Bella's boutique, the fancy dress shop downtown. The window display was breathtaking, elegant gowns in every color imaginable, each one more beautiful than the last. The prices, displayed on small silver tags, made my heart sink. Most of the dresses cost more than I'd make in 2 months of part-time work. I pressed my face to the glass, looking at a gorgeous emerald green dress that seemed to shimmer in the afternoon light. It was perfect, exactly the kind of dress I'd dreamed of wearing to prom. The price tag read $299, which might as well have been $2,999 given my current budget. I'd saved $47 so far, which felt like a fortune when I'd started, but now seemed impossibly small. Other girls walked by with their mothers, chatting excitedly about trying on different styles. I stood alone on the sidewalk, my work uniform probably making me look out of place among the well-dressed shoppers. For a moment, the old despair threatened to creep back in. But then I remembered my journal entry, my promise to stop being invisible. $47 was a start. I just needed to keep working, keep saving, keep believing. Mrs. Chin, the boutique owner, noticed me looking through the window during my break from work. She was an elegant woman with kind eyes, probably in her 50s, with the sort of style that made expensive clothes look effortless. "You've been admiring that dress for a while," she said gently, stepping out of the shop to join me on the sidewalk. I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment, probably looking like some pathetic window shopper who couldn't afford to actually enter the store. "It's beautiful," I managed to say, "but probably out of my price range." Mrs. Chen studied my face for a moment, and I wondered if she could see the longing there, the desperation I was trying so hard to hide. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "that particular dress has been in the window for months. Sometimes when a piece doesn't sell quickly, we need to make room for new inventory." My heart started beating faster. "What are you saying?" She smiled warmly. "Come inside tomorrow after school. Let's see if we can work something out. Every girl deserves to feel beautiful on prom night." I could barely breathe as she headed back into her shop. Was this really happening? Had a stranger just offered to help make my dream possible? The next afternoon, my hands shook as I entered the boutique. Mrs. Chen smiled when she saw me, immediately leading me to the emerald green dress I'd been admiring. "Try it on," she said simply. In the dressing room, I carefully slipped the dress over my head, hardly daring to look in the mirror. When I finally did, I gasped. The girl looking back at me was transformed, elegant, confident, beautiful. The dress fit perfectly, as if it had been made specifically for me. The color brought out my eyes, and the cut was incredibly flattering. I'd never seen myself look so grown up, so sophisticated. "How does it feel?" Mrs. Chin called from outside the curtain. "Perfect," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. When I emerged from the dressing room, Mrs. Chen's face lit up. "I knew it would be beautiful on you," she said warmly. "Now, let's talk price. I can let you have it for $65, and you can pay in installments if you need to." $65. I had 47 saved, which meant I only needed 18 more. It was actually possible. "Really?" I asked, hardly believing it. "Really," she confirmed. Every girl deserves her fairy tale moment. A week later, I carefully carried the dress bag up to my room, my heart pounding with excitement and nervousness. I'd made the final payment that afternoon, and Mrs. Chin had thrown in a small clutch purse that matched perfectly. The dress was mine, the first beautiful thing I'd ever owned that was completely, totally mine. I hung it in my closet and just stared at it for several minutes, still hardly believing this was real. That's when Mom appeared in my doorway without knocking, as usual. Her eyes immediately went to the dress bag hanging prominently in my closet. "What's that?" she demanded, her voice already sharp with suspicion. I took a breath, trying to prepare myself for whatever was coming. "My prom dress," I said simply. Mom pushed past me and unzipped the bag, revealing the emerald green gown. For a moment, she was speechless, probably surprised that I'd managed to get something so elegant. Then her expression twisted into something cruel. "That cheap thing," she sneered, fingering the fabric with disdain. "You'll look ridiculous." Everyone will be able to tell it's discount trash. Her words stung, but I noticed she couldn't actually find fault with the dress itself, only make vague insults about it being cheap. Instead of crying like I usually did when Mom tore me down, something different happened. I looked at her standing there in my room, criticizing a dress she'd refused to help me get, and I felt a strange calm come over me. This dress represented hours of hard work, determination, and the kindness of a stranger who believed I deserved to feel beautiful. Mom's cruel words couldn't change that. "You know what?" I said quietly, walking over to my closet and carefully taking the dress off its hanger. "I don't care what you think." Mom's eyebrows shot up in surprise. I'd never stood up to her so directly before. I slipped the dress over my head, zipped it up, and turned to face the mirror. The same transformation happened as in the boutique. I looked confident, elegant, worthy. "I earned this dress myself," I said, meeting my own eyes in the mirror rather than looking at Mom. "I worked for it, saved for it, and it's mine. Your opinion doesn't matter." Mom sputtered behind me, clearly shocked by my defiance, but I barely heard her. I was too busy making a promise to my reflection. I wouldn't let anyone make me feel small ever again. Prom night finally arrived, and I'd never felt more nervous or excited in my life. I'd done my own hair and makeup, using YouTube tutorials and drugstore cosmetics, but I thought I looked pretty good. The emerald dress fit like a dream, and I'd found shoes at a discount store that worked perfectly. When I walked into the decorated gymnasium, I felt like I was entering a fairy tale. The lights were dim and romantic, music filled the air, and everything looked magical. But the best part was the reaction I got. Heads turned when I entered, and I heard whispered compliments from classmates who'd probably never really noticed me before. "You look absolutely stunning," Madison called out, the same girl who'd been showing off expensive boutique finds weeks earlier. My English teacher, Mrs. Anderson, appeared at my side, beaming with pride. "I'm so glad you decided to come after all," she said warmly. "You look radiant." For the first time in my life, I felt like I truly belonged somewhere, like I was worthy of attention and admiration. Every dollar I'd saved, every sore foot from long shifts at the diner, every moment of doubt, it had all been worth it for this feeling. The night flew by in a blur of dancing, laughter, and photos. My friends insisted on taking pictures of me everywhere, by the photo booth, on the dance floor, during slow songs. "You have to post these," they kept saying, snapping away with their phones. The photos were beautiful, but more importantly, my smile in every single one was genuine. I wasn't pretending to be happy or forcing myself to look confident. I actually felt radiant from the inside out. During a quiet moment between songs, I stepped outside for some air and pulled out my phone to look at the pictures my friends had tagged me in. The girl in those photos looked sophisticated, confident, and genuinely joyful. She looked like someone whose dreams mattered, someone worth celebrating. When I got home later that night, still glowing from the perfect evening, I carefully uploaded my favorite photo to social media. "Sometimes you have to make your own dreams come true," I captioned it, thinking about the journey that had brought me to this moment. Within minutes, the likes and comments started pouring in from classmates, teachers, and even some family friends who'd seen the post. My phone started buzzing incessantly around noon the next day. Mom's name kept appearing on the screen, but I was too exhausted and happy from prom night to deal with her negativity. Finally, I answered. "Where did you get that dress?" she demanded without preamble, her voice shaking with anger. "I saw the photos online." "That's not some cheap discount dress. That's expensive." "Who paid for it?" I could hear the suspicion and fury in her voice, probably assuming I'd somehow tricked or manipulated someone into buying it for me. "I told you," I said calmly, "I bought it myself." "With what money?" she shrieked. "You don't have a job." The accusation hung in the air for a moment. She was so convinced I was incapable of taking care of myself that she couldn't even consider the possibility that I might have found a way to earn money. "Actually, I do have a job," I replied, feeling a surge of pride. "I've been working at Murphy's Diner for over a month. I saved every penny to buy that dress myself." The silence on the other end told me she was processing this information, probably trying to figure out how to make me feel guilty about it. "You can't have a job without our permission," Mom sputtered, but I could hear uncertainty creeping into her voice. And you certainly can't make major purchases without consulting us first. Her words no longer had the power to make me feel small or guilty. I'd proven to myself that I was capable of taking care of my own needs, making my own decisions, and creating my own happiness. Actually, I said with newfound confidence, I can, and I did. I'm 17, I found legitimate work, and I spent my own earned money on something that made me happy. You don't get to control that. There was another long pause. This is ridiculous, Mom finally said, but her voice lacked its usual authority. You're still living under our roof, following our rules. Your rules, I replied calmly, never included anything about working hard or pursuing my dreams. Those were my choices, and they turned out pretty well. I could practically hear her jaw dropping through the phone. The invisible daughter who never stood up for herself was gone, replaced by someone who knew her own worth. I have to go, I said firmly. I'm framing my prom photos. And for the first time in my life, I hung up on her. Over the next few days, the comments and reactions to my prom photos kept coming. Mrs. Anderson wrote a lengthy comment about how proud she was of my determination and independence. Classmates shared the photos, adding their own compliments about how beautiful I looked. Even some of my coworkers from the diner found the pictures online and left encouraging messages about how hard I'd worked to make this happen. But the most interesting comments came from adult family friends and neighbors who'd watched me grow up. Such a responsible, hard-working young lady, wrote Mrs. Patterson from down the street. Your parents must be so proud of how independent you've become. Another neighbor commented, beautiful dress. Did you pick it out yourself? You have excellent taste. I noticed that several people were asking questions about where my parents had been in all this, clearly picking up on the fact that this had been entirely my own effort. Word was spreading through our small community about the girl who'd worked to buy her own prom dress because her family wouldn't help. People were starting to whisper, and not all of the whispers reflected well on Mom and Dad. That evening at dinner, Carl looked at me differently for the first time in years. I saw your prom photos, he said quietly, almost like he was talking to someone he'd just met. You actually looked really good. Coming from my brother, who usually acted like I was invisible furniture, this was a significant statement. Where did you get the money for all that? He asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. When I explained about the job and saving money, his expression changed to something I'd never seen before, respect. I didn't know you had it in you, he admitted, and for once there wasn't any mockery in his tone. Even Dad looked up from his plate, studying me with what might have been the first genuine interest he'd shown in years. You've been working this whole time, he asked. When I nodded, he seemed to consider this information carefully. That's actually pretty impressive. Mom remained silent throughout this conversation, clearly uncomfortable with the positive attention I was receiving. But I didn't need her approval anymore. I'd found something much more valuable, my own self-respect and the respect of others who recognized real accomplishment when they saw it. The next weekend, I went to the drugstore and bought a simple but elegant picture frame. I carefully chose my favorite prom photo, the one where I was laughing genuinely, my eyes bright with joy, the emerald dress catching the light perfectly. At home, I placed the framed photo prominently on the mantelpiece in our living room, right next to the family photos and Kyle's various sports trophies. It looked perfect there, a testament to what could be achieved through determination and hard work. Every time Mom walked through that room, she'd be forced to see the evidence of the night she'd tried to deny me, the dream she'd called pathetic and frivolous. But more than that, I'd see it every day too, a reminder of my own strength, my own worth, my own ability to create the life I wanted. The girl in that photo had learned something invaluable. Sometimes the best revenge isn't anger or bitterness. Sometimes it's simply refusing to let other people's limitations become your own. I was no longer the invisible daughter, the forgotten child, the one whose dreams didn't matter. I was someone who made things happen, who found a way when others said there was no way. And every time I looked at that photo, I remembered exactly who I'd chosen to become. If this story of self-determination and perseverance inspired you, please subscribe for more tales of young people who refuse to let others dim their shine. Share this with anyone who needs a reminder that your dreams are valid and worth fighting for, even when the people closest to you don't see their value. Your support helps us tell more stories of triumph over doubt and the incredible power of believing in yourself when no one else will. Thanks for watching.